The mirror pulled me in. The mirror rippled like warm skin, its surface stretching toward me, as if it recognized my reflection and wanted to claim it before the creatures behind my throat could emerge fully. The wooden door still dangled from my jaw, pulsing, glowing faintly, each throb perfectly synced with the knocking inside it, soft, urgent, multiplying by the second. The creature beside me pressed its elongated fingers against my back, guiding me forward, its touch warm and sticky, like sap dripping from a tree that shouldn't be alive. My reflection blinked out of sync with me, eyes dilating too wide, mouth stretching impossibly far as shadows behind the glass crowded for a better view. As my hand neared the mirror, the surface parted like tissue paper soaked in warm water, strands pulling away and thin threads that clung to my fingers. Cold air poured out, smelling of old stone, damp soil, and something faintly sweet, a scent familiar from dreams I'd never admitted I'd had. The creature's hand tightened on my shoulder, urging me forward, its breath brushing my ear with a sigh that felt like memory instead of sound. Behind me, the knocking inside the door grew louder, faster, as if the others sensed movement and didn't want to be left behind. My reflection opened its mouth wider, stretching to the sides of its face, revealing black gums lined with countless tiny doors, each one trembling eagerly. The glass skin of the mirror peeled back farther, exposing a corridor made of pale stone, walls moving like lungs, breathing slow, patient breaths. The creature slipped past me, entering the corridor first, walking on backward-bending limbs that clicked softly against the shifting floor. I tried to speak, but the wooden door inside my mouth prevented sound, vibrating instead, releasing faint whispers that made the corridor tremble in response. When I stepped forward, the floor pulsed beneath my feet, as if sensing my weight, adjusting its shape to cradle me like a living pathway. Behind me, faint silhouettes pushed against the door in my throat, tiny fingers curling through cracks, trying to force themselves into the new space. The corridor stretched endlessly, lightless yet visible, illuminated by a dim glow radiating from my own skin, veins glowing in unnatural blue. The creature paused, tilting its head backward, eyes vertical, listening to something only it could hear, then motioned for me to follow more quickly. As I moved deeper, faces appeared on the walls, flattened, stretched, whispering warnings with mouths carved into stone, each one echoing my own voice. One face blinked, tears carving through stone like acid, whispering a name I hadn't heard spoken aloud in years, a name I'd buried intentionally. The floor shifted and dropped slightly, revealing gaps beneath it where twisted shapes crawled, their limbs spiraling in frantic, insect-like patterns. Every movement I made caused them to twitch excitedly, reaching upward as if my presence fed them, their mouths opening with wet, clicking hunger. The creature looked back, gestured urgently, and I followed, noticing its body glow faintly each time I stepped closer, like it drew energy from me. A deep vibration shook the corridor, and the door in my throat answered, rattling violently, as more hands pressed against it, eager to emerge. The walls bent inward, narrowing, as though funneling me toward a room ahead, where shadows pulsed like living flame, rising and collapsing rhythmically. I felt a tug behind my teeth, then a sharp snap, as one of the small doors inside the wooden frame cracked open just enough for an eye to peek. A whisper slid out, coiling around my ear with impossible intimacy, promising insight if I kept moving, urging me forward like a partner guiding a dance. The corridor opened into a chamber filled with mirrors, hundreds, each one warped, showing versions of me with stretched bones and hollowed faces. Some reflections smiled knowingly, raising their hands in greeting, while others pressed their palms desperately against the glass, screaming silently. The creature stepped aside, motioning toward the largest mirror, its surface swirling like the first one, but darker, almost completely black. Behind me, the wooden door split wider, hinges snapping, as several fingers slid out simultaneously, gripping my tongue with familiarity. The creature placed its hand on my back, pushing me toward the dark mirror, whispering that this was where I was always meant to return. As the darkness reached forward, wrapping around my face like warm cloth, I realized the knocking had stopped, not because they gave up, but because they'd finally decided to follow. They followed me out of the mirror. The darkness from the mirror wrapped around my head like warm, wet fabric, pulling me through with a force that pressed my ribs inward until they creaked under the pressure. On the other side, the air crackled with static, thick and shimmering, clinging to my skin like invisible threads tightening every time I tried to breathe normally. The creature stepped beside me, its limbs folding and unfolding in unnatural rhythms, eyes glowing faintly as if feeding on the strange atmosphere surrounding us. When I turned, the mirror behind me pulsed violently, surface warping as hands pressed against it from the other side, fingers curling through liquefied glass. The wooden door in my mouth snapped fully open, hinges cracking, releasing a sudden gust of warm air that smelled like dust, soil, and something faintly chemical. Small silhouettes poured out, first thin, child-sized forms hunched and trembling, their skin translucent, veins spiraling like black vines beneath the surface. Their eyes blinked sideways, glimmering with a familiarity that chilled me, each gaze carrying a strange recognition, like they'd been waiting centuries for me. As they crawled onto the ground, the floor warped beneath their feet, adjusting its shape, stretching into flesh-like patterns that pulsed with each of their movements. Larger figures followed, dragging themselves from the mirror, limbs bending like wet twigs, faces splitting open vertically as they inhaled the strange air greedily. The corridor darkened, shadows thickening into tangible strands that wrapped around the emerging creatures, guiding them forward with soft, comforting motions. One creature stepped toward me, its jaw opening too wide, revealing rows of tiny doors inside its throat that clicked open and closed like mechanical insects. From those miniature doors, whispers emerged soft, pleading, promising clarity, urging me to keep moving deeper where everything supposedly made sense. The creature that first guided me bowed its head slightly, as though acknowledging my role, its long fingers tracing symbols across its own chest. Ahead, the environment twisted between stone and flesh, walls melting into ribbed structures that looked grown instead of built, alive, and impossibly ancient. Every step I took echoed unnaturally, the sound delayed, repeated, and twisted, as if multiple versions of me walked slightly behind, slightly ahead, slightly elsewhere. The air thickened suddenly, vibrating with a low hum that resonated against my jaw, vibrating the wooden door still attached to my mouth like a tuning fork. More creatures filed out of the mirror, moving with purpose, each one glancing toward me briefly, their expressions shifting with strange reverence or hunger. As they gathered behind me, I felt their collective breath, a warm exhale that carried fragmented memories I shouldn't have known, but recognized instantly. My vision blurred, then sharpened, revealing thin lines stretching overhead vein-like networks glowing faintly, connecting everything in a web of living circuitry. The creatures moved beneath the glowing veins, raising their arms reverently, absorbing drops of fluid that fell rhythmically like ritualistic blessings. When a drop landed on my arm, my skin rippled, absorbing it instantly, sending a wave of warmth through my chest that almost felt stabilizing. The creature beside me murmured something, voice sliding like liquid, and instantly the others stepped aside, clearing a path deeper into the shifting chamber. At the far end, a massive archway formed its frame shaped from bone and stone intertwined, symbols carved into its surface, pulsing like heartbeats. Through the archway, faint silhouettes shifted, towering figures with elongated arms dragging across the floor, their footsteps shaking the air itself. The creatures behind me trembled as those shapes approached, not with fear but anticipation, as though awaiting long-delayed instructions. The wooden door in my mouth quivered again, its small inner doors clicking open one by one, releasing thin streams of black smoke that coiled upward. The smoke gathered into a shape beside me tall, vaguely human, its features rippling like oil on water, mouth stretching into a smile too wide. It placed a hand on my shoulder, impossibly cold and impossibly familiar, pressing with gentle insistence that nudged me toward the glowing archway. Behind us, the mirror sealed itself shut with a sound like a wet heartbeat, cutting off the way back completely, trapping us inside this breathing architecture. The larger silhouettes beyond the archway stepped forward, their features bending like reflections in rippling water, each one tilting its head toward me slowly. And as the chamber darkened around us, every creature large, small, smoke-borne, flesh-etched lowered itself in unison, as though I'd finally returned to the place I was always meant to lead. Voices between the gums. The moment I closed my eyes, whispers pressed against the inside of my jaw, soft syllables twisting between teeth like thin threads pulling at the corners of my mind. Veins along my gums throbbed in response, expanding and contracting like tunnels, slick and pink, stretching into shapes that suggested corridors far larger than my skull could contain. A flicker of movement beneath the molars caught my attention. Tiny shifts of light, tracing impossible angles, as if the mouth's interior had grown into a labyrinth I could crawl through. The whispers grew urgent, overlapping, speaking in tones I somehow understood yet couldn't articulate, fragments of memories from mouths that had once existed and were now trapped here. A sudden pressure on my tongue made me gasp. A small tooth pressed upward with intelligence, nudging me toward the center of the interior, demanding that I explore further. I ran my tongue along the upper molars, feeling tunnels stretch and widen beneath the enamel, each pulse resonating like a heartbeat, belonging to the mouth itself. The walls of my cheeks flexed inward, then outward, creating suction that dragged my lips slightly toward the teeth, as if the mouth wanted me to approach willingly. I could see shapes in the reflection of saliva, faint silhouettes pressed into the pink walls, writhing and moving in unison, trapped consciousnesses that watched every motion I made. A sharp edge of a canine scraped my tongue, and I felt the memory of a scream centuries old, pressing through bone and gum directly into my ears. I tried speaking, but my voice sounded wrong, doubled, layered with whispers, echoing from teeth that had learned language far older than my own ability to form it. The veins beneath the gums shifted rhythmically, pulsating like tunnels, expanding and contracting, carrying light and shadows, revealing corridors inside the mouth I had never imagined. Something shifted behind the incisors, pressing against my tongue with intent, the pressure forming a shape almost like a hand, curling inward, exploring, testing, aware of my hesitation. The whispers grew louder, urgent, speaking in the same cadence, repeating names, fragments of pleas, instructions, warnings, as though previous victims were teaching me how to survive. A low vibration traveled through the jaw, resonating through teeth and gums, syncing with my heartbeat, creating a rhythm I could neither escape nor control. I felt something slide across the roof of my mouth, slick and warm, an appendage I could not identify moving with purpose, searching, testing, measuring the space I occupied. A distant flicker of light shimmered down a tunnel formed along the upper molars, stretching farther than my skull should allow, suggesting the mouth was far larger than reality permitted. The teeth clicked softly, forming patterns of sound and vibration that seemed to punctuate the whispers, like punctuation in a sentence written in bone and flesh. I traced the veins with my tongue, feeling the pulsating tunnels flex beneath, guiding me, shaping the paths, forming a map of the internal world I was trapped inside. The whispers turned frantic, overlapping, voices from mouths long gone, warning of something deeper, something beneath the rows of teeth, coiled and patient, waiting for me to follow too far. A molar shifted, pressing down with sharp insistence, directing me toward the center, while the incisors scraped lightly, forming a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat counting down. I realized I wasn't alone. Small forms slithered along the veins, glimpsed only in reflections and shadows, moving like tiny grotesque children of the mouth, aware, intelligent, waiting. The roof of my mouth bulged slightly, stretching into a hollow chamber that wasn't supposed to exist, and I sensed something vast coiled within, breathing, alive, patient, enormous. I pressed my tongue to the upper incisors, feeling vibrations travel upward into my skull, syncing with the whispers, as if the voices were learning my mind as I explored theirs. A sudden flicker revealed a shadow moving along the gums, curling around teeth like a living rope, twisting, pulsing, pressing against my inner cheek with grotesque curiosity. The veins stretched further, pulsating like tunnels alive, expanding beyond comprehension, carrying whispers that promised knowledge, threats, and the faint suggestion that I could never leave completely intact. I felt a tug along the lower molars, soft but insistent, dragging me slightly forward, as though the mouth wanted me to journey deeper, to discover what lay beyond the teeth. A faint glow emerged between gaps, revealing tiny faces pressed into the enamel, eyes blinking, mouths forming words silently, all trying to speak simultaneously, an impossible chorus of trapped souls. The pressure increased, walls of the mouth flexing around me, pulsating, forcing my tongue to navigate impossible curves and turns, shaping my exploration like a guide through its labyrinth. A sharp vibration ran through the jaw, teeth clicking together in a pattern, signaling a warning, reminding me that every step further in could awaken something even larger, waiting below. I tried to pull back, but the veins contracted slightly, corralling me, guiding me forward, ensuring I saw what the inside had prepared, an interior world far larger than imagined. The whispers crescendoed, overlapping voices from mouths I never knew, pressing into every nerve, warning me, teaching me, reminding me that the inside of myself was not mine alone. A single tooth pressed sharply against the tongue again, sending a vibration through the skull that suggested both instruction and threat, promising I had only glimpsed the surface of this endless interior. The tunnels of veins beneath the gums pulsed in unison, a grotesque symphony, stretching beyond comprehension, carrying voices, shadows, and shapes, leaving me aware that I was no longer alone inside myself. The thing walking around inside my skin, I felt something shift beneath my shoulder blade while brushing my teeth, a slow roll like a knuckle pushing up from under my skin, stretching the surface as if testing its thickness. When I pressed the spot, it moved away fast, sliding downward like it didn't want to be touched, wriggling deeper as though my body was just temporary shelter for something growing. The movement didn't hurt. It felt curious, exploratory, like a fingertip tracing its way through my muscles, memorizing tunnels it intended to widen once it understood the layout completely. By noon, it reached my ribs, dragging a line across bone with gentle pressure, scraping like it wanted to sign its name inside me, marking territory where I couldn't reach. I watched my side bulge outward with each step, subtle but undeniable, forming small waves beneath my skin, like something swimming just beneath the surface of warm, living water. When I lay down, it rose higher, pressing into my chest, lifting skin in slow pulses, almost affectionate, adjusting itself as though preparing a space that matched its growing shape. The mirror caught the movement perfectly, my reflection showing a long ridge traveling beneath my sternum, curving upward like a creature mapping where it wanted its head to emerge. I tried massaging it downward, but it held position firmly, pressing upward with a stubborn intent, stretching my skin thin enough that I swore I saw something blink beneath. My breathing synchronized with its movement without my permission, each inhale dragging it higher, each exhale letting it sink slightly, sharing rhythm like we were quietly negotiating territory. I lifted my shirt to film it, but the bulge flattened instantly, hiding from the camera, settling into stillness as if recognizing it wasn't ready for witnesses yet. When I looked away, it pushed upward again, harder this time, making my chest throb with a strange warmth, almost like it wanted to hear my heartbeat from the inside. I pressed my palm over the spot and felt a thready vibration, not quite a heartbeat, more like pacing footsteps circling a confined room, walking circles inside my torso. My skin began tightening around it, pulling inward like shrink wrap sealing something fragile, forming a soft outline that didn't match any anatomy I recognized, long and jointed in wrong places. At dinner, a metallic taste filled my mouth. Not blood, more like rusting metal warmed by breath, drifting up my throat like whatever lived inside was exhaling through my lungs. I leaned over the sink, and my chest swelled sharply, pushing a long shape against my ribs, like it was testing how easily my bones would bend if encouraged gently. Under my collarbone, something scraped upward, small claws dragging lightly as if climbing, carving a delicate path toward the hollow of my throat, where the skin thinned naturally. The pressure rose higher, forming a slender peak beneath my neck, pushing upward like the first knuckle of a hand, trying to slide out through the narrowest possible exit. My voice sounded unfamiliar when I said hello into the empty room, thinner and doubled, like another tone perched directly behind my own, waiting for its chance to answer alone. I felt it settle deeper, curling gently like a resting animal preparing for night, adjusting its limbs in soft, methodical movements that made my heartbeat skip with each shift. When I tried lying on my stomach, it pushed back angrily, forcing me onto my back again, shaping my posture, deciding how I should sleep so it could grow comfortably. The dreams came immediately, filled with narrow tunnels lined with warm, pulsing walls that opened for me, guiding me toward some unseen center I instinctively recognized as home. I woke with my throat swollen, the skin stretching from within, a narrow silhouette pushing upward like something was bracing itself, preparing to stand fully inside my body. I pressed ice against the swelling, but the cold only made it move deeper, sliding downward to avoid discomfort, clinging to warmth like it understood exactly what kept it alive. As I walked, my shadow lagged slightly behind, chest bulging in delayed pulses, showing the creature's movement a half-second later, like light struggled to reveal our shared outline. When I sat down, it tapped gently against my sternum, signaling something, maybe impatience, maybe hunger, maybe a reminder it didn't need my permission to keep expanding. My skin stretched painfully for the first time, fibers straining like stitching pulled apart. A thin crackling sound beneath the surface warning something inside had reached its limit. I felt it rise again, moving confidently, pushing outward with purpose, as if ready to introduce itself, as if this body was now simply the wrapping it prepared to shed. The ridge beneath my throat pulsed 3 times, steady and decisive, like knocking from the inside, letting me know it finally chose where it wanted to come out. My phone buzzed with a notification, the vibration mixing with the creature's movement, and a strange calm settled over me, telling me someone should hear this before I disappear. If you're watching, you might want to subscribe, because I don't know how many more nights I'll stay myself, and I'd prefer someone remembers what used to live in here. The skin above my collarbone is stretching again, thinner now, warming rapidly, and whatever's inside keeps shifting higher, eager to introduce itself through the softest part of me. It's pressing harder, pushing upward with certainty, shaping the outline of its face just beneath my neck, ready to meet the world using the only doorway my body can offer. The mouth swallowed more than me. I realized the first hint something had escaped came in the kitchen. A silver spoon resting on the counter with teeth marks I didn't make, perfectly precise, like it had chewed itself into existence. The faucet dripped, but the drops carried faint whispers, soft syllables from inside me, speaking in tongues I couldn't comprehend, suggesting the inside world had reached outward, touching reality. A shadow passed across the living room wall. It wasn't mine. Something elongated, thin, and crooked moved independently, sliding along surfaces like it had climbed out from my mouth world. The mail on the counter rattled as I approached. Envelopes shifted subtly, letters inside scratched against each other, leaving messages I couldn't read yet somehow recognized as warnings. I caught sight of the fridge handle. It was bent slightly, polished smooth, as though something had gripped it from the inside and applied pressure impossible for human hands. The living room window fogged from within. I could see small faces pressing against the glass. No reflection, only dark eyes staring at me, whispering with mouths that hadn't been part of my reality. I tried stepping outside, but the garden path rippled like soft clay, undulating as if tunnels beneath the earth had reshaped the soil, expanding corridors that connected back to the interior of my mouth. Something small scuttled across the floor, a molar-sized creature with a glinting enamel shell, moving with purpose, scanning the room, testing surfaces, tasting the air like a tiny explorer from the inside world. I glanced at the neighbor's yard. Something stretched the shadows, thin and elongated, bending over fences, moving across grass, defying normal physics, its proportions grotesque and uncanny, aware of me. A doorknob turned slowly. I didn't touch it. A subtle vibration ran up my arm as if fingers made of bone had curled around it, testing their ability to interact outside the mouth world. The walls shifted imperceptibly, stretching and flexing. Light pooled oddly along corners, forming new spaces that hadn't existed before. Hallways stretching into impossible dimensions. Tunnels opening from interior to exterior. I heard distant scraping above me, ceiling tiles flexing, small shapes emerging, leaning down, testing gravity and space, pulling reality subtly toward the internal world I had been trapped in. A silver fork quivered on the counter. Tiny scratches appeared along its tines, forming patterns like teeth moving in unison, gnawing at the boundaries between my mouth and the house. I leaned closer to the refrigerator. Something slithered under the door, a glinting shape trailing from the inside world, leaving behind traces of enamel dust and faint whispers I could feel more than hear. The living room carpet lifted slightly in waves, forming small hills, hollows, as if tiny tunnels below pressed upward, reshaping normal space to accommodate creatures far smaller than a human eye could track. I stepped back and realized the inside world had stretched farther than I expected. Objects were moving without cause. Air shifted subtly, and every surface hummed faintly with pulse-like vibrations. The telephone rang, though no line was connected. I picked it up. Silence pressed through. A faint vibration carried along the cord, like a whisper trying to pass a message from my mouth world into reality. I turned to the hallway. A shadow moved independently of light, bending around corners, impossibly thin and jointed, crawling across walls and ceiling, aware, watching, testing, learning the contours of my home. A drawer opened slowly. Inside, silverware shifted in formation, arranging themselves in small lines, tiny gaps appearing like teeth, hinting at the structure of the inside mouth world replicated outside. I could hear whispering through vents, faint at first, growing stronger, voices layering, suggesting mouths and teeth beyond comprehension, teaching me that the inside world's reach had already touched my reality. The carpet rippled again. Small faces appeared in patterns along the fibers, eyes blinking, mouths moving, forming warnings and messages in a grotesque mimicry of my own interior. I tried to contain myself, but the sensations pressed harder. Shapes crawling along the walls, ceiling, floor, moving closer, as if the mouth world wanted me aware of its expansion. My reflection in the window shifted independently, faintly grinning, a distorted version of myself, stepping slightly out from behind the glass. A figure formed from inside, observing me. I reached for the door, trembling, and it resisted my grip. A faint pressure from the other side suggested a limb, small but precise, was testing the boundaries of reality from inside. The kitchen tiles lifted slightly underfoot. I could feel shapes shifting beneath them, crawling, exploring, expanding the internal world into the structure of the house, rearranging physical space with impossible geometry. The clock on the wall ticked erratically, hands twitching, moving against time itself, as if the interior world of the mouth had begun to warp temporal perception outside. A faint scratching sound pressed at the ceiling and the walls. Shapes were climbing, elongating, slithering, carrying the inside world's grotesque geometry into every corner of reality around me. I saw it then, a familiar shape moving in the hallway shadow, distorted but unmistakable, a fragment of my own body, a reflection of teeth and veins emerging from the mouth world's expansion. I stumbled backward, realizing the house itself was being reshaped. Rooms subtly elongated, objects moving independently, corridors stretching toward impossible dimensions as the mouth's interior pushed outward. The whispers intensified, overlapping with the new sounds of movement, as if the inside world had learned to speak in unison outside my body, teaching the environment to respond to its presence. I froze, heart hammering, watching a shadow reach from the darkness, creeping along the floor, familiar yet wrong, and understood that the inside world's reach was now no longer confined to me alone. If you're seeing this, subscribe, because what came out of my mouth is still spreading, reshaping spaces, and no one knows how far it will go before it reaches the rest of the world.